Okay, so now we're recording. So trust me, I will send out the recording to everybody after we meet because I think it's important when we do these things because everybody, there are going to be times when things happen that you can't get to the Zoom session, and that way everybody can get everything. Okay. Um, I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and dive in with everybody who's here thus far, and we will. And if people come in, we'll just do the best we can to pull them all back in. Um, so everything should be fine. Let me just ask real quick. How many of you all are currently working in schools right now? Either you're doing an internship or you're teaching in a residency position or lateral entry, as the case might be. There you are, Donnell. How are you? I can see you.
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. But or you're working in a child care center in an NC pre-K program or something along those lines. Is everybody currently in a school site?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That
yes.
the reason why I'm asking is very simply because there are things that you're going to have to be able to see other kids doing, and if you're not there, then I'm worried about how we might have to work that out. But don't worry, we can get through this. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Gainey, and I've been teaching with UMO for since 2013. And I'm a retired school administrator. I retired out of Craven County Schools on July 1st and had been working with UMO, and they offered me the chance to work with you all, and I'm doing this. And some of you all may have some contact with me through the PPAT preparation stuff coming up. For those of you who have to do the PPAT, because one of the things that the university's got me doing is I'm doing the support sessions for folks who have to do the PPAT. So, if you take 484, you'll be with me. If you take 486 or 480, there's a chance you will end up with me at some point in time. And if you're getting ready to take the assessment, or as far as doing you know, the tasks, then you and I will have a lot of contact. Uh, I will go ahead and tell you, hey, Paquita, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. And can you hear us all okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, good. I'm glad. But as I said before, I'm going to be recording these sessions every week, and I'm going to send them out after we get done, because everybody in the class may not be able to be at the sessions, and particularly if you're working in schools and you have things that come up, parent nights, Title I nights, things like that, where you have to be in the school and you can't miss it, and your principal tells you you got to be there, or your program director tells you got to be there. I understand. We're going to work through that. Tell you a little bit about this class. This is EDU 480. This is Classroom Organization and Management. And I'm going to start by going ahead and telling you right now, there is no magic formula for managing a classroom. There is no magic formula for getting a child to sit in a seat. And there is no magic formula for getting a child to do what you want them to do. And I'll tell you, the reason why I say this is I spent a lot of time as an elementary school principal. I worked with exceptional children. When I left there, I was in the central office. I worked with the kids who had to have psychological day treatment after I left my school and went to work in the central office. So, like I said, I spent a lot of time working with DSS, working with social services, working with juvenile justice. I spent a lot of time in court. So, I can tell you there's no magic way to get them to do it. I did read a lot of your first posts in the forums, and one of the things that I noticed that I thought was great was there were a variety of things that are part of creating an effective management plan. A lot of you all were very big on relationships, consistency, having relationships with the children's parents, having very clear and established rules and processes for how you do business in your classroom. All those things are part of the correct answer. Don't worry. So, that's one of the things I will tell you is that, all those things people talked about are very important. Consistency is very important. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this class. This class, I will say this right now. This class is going to be a class where we're going to look at the things we do and the whys and the hows, because it's real important to understand. I mean, I remember when I first started teaching, I remember walking in a classroom, and one of the things that we're better about now than we used to be is we would replicate something we had done when we were in school. Anybody ever had that happen? You walked in and said, well, I did this when I was in school, and I'm going to do it. That's all there is to it. I'm going to do it. That's it. Well, but do you know why it was done? That's the difference between where we were 30 years ago and where we are now. We look at a lot of the why part when we talk about classroom management. And when we talk about getting students to learn how to learn, we talk about the why part. Where does this idea come from? Where does that idea come from? Those things are really, really important. And that's one of the things that I think is really going to be key for people to understand as we go through this class. I want you to think about what you know and what you do and why you might do certain things. I'm going to tell you right now, I have had students who, the minute they walked in the door, if I could have picked up something and slapped them with it, I'd have done it. But I also know this. I also know that those students act the way they act because of the fact that they've been allowed to. Y'all, this is my 7-year-old Avery, and she's in the first grade, and she
Hey, Avery.
and
Hi.
sometimes she'll stop in. So just if she pops her head in the door, you'll know she's just cruising in to say hello. Are you good? Okay. Why don't you go in there with mommy? Okay. Close the door. All right. But all things considered, and that's another reason why classroom management is important to me. I have a 7-year-old who, I want to get the best out of the whole school experience. So it's really important as far as what I expect from people who are working with my child and from what I expect my child to do when they're around those people. Hold on just a moment. The beauty about teaching at home is that you're at home. The curse about teaching at home is you're at home. So anyway, but all things considered. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the assignments. I have some very basic assignments, and I'm going to tell you one of the things about my assignments is this. I look at this as a coaching process. I do not look at this as you do it right and you make an A, you do it wrong, you fail it. All right. I look at it like this. If you're working on something and you're getting better, I reward people working to get better. All right. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to do everything in my power to help you make a good grade. But I understand, there are expectations you're going to have. I can tell you right now, we have individual response activities that you're going to have to do that are in there. I think there are 2 of those. There's some online forums you're going to have to do, which you'll have to respond to and then respond to 2 of your classmates. That goes into your participation grade. You have a classroom management plan that you're going to have to put together by week 5. And, classroom management plans are very important because I'm a firm believer that if you don't have an established plan for how you do business in your classroom, that you're not going to be very effective as a teacher. Kids aren't going to learn in your class. Then we also are going to have a functional behavior assessment that you're going to have to do. And all of that stuff is on the syllabus already. It's broken down in the Moodle. And you're also going to have a behavior intervention plan you're going to have to do. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this behavior intervention plan because it's a lot different than other assignments you've probably done. There's an essay that I'm going to expect you to read. And it was written by Dick Gregory, and it was about his own personal experiences when he was in elementary school because he was considered the troublemaker kid. And you're going to have to write a behavior intervention plan for this child in the essay. All right. Now, and then the final big assessment the final big assignment we're going to have at the end of the course is going to be an essay that you're going to have to write regarding emotional intelligence. Because I think one of the things as teachers that we don't think about is this, is that we spend all this time training ourselves to be teachers. We train ourselves in our curriculum. We train ourselves in psychology. We train ourselves in sociology. We train ourselves in human relations. We train ourselves in all these things. But quite often, we don't think about our emotional intelligence. Do we understand why this child might do this? Do we understand why this parent might react when you call him or her about an issue? And those are things important to us that we need to think about if we're going to help kids learn how to learn. Let me ask you a question. How many of you all were here last year when Hurricane Florence came through? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this real quick. If you were in and around school buildings, what did you notice when the kids finally got back into the school building? Come on,
They were
just
a bit
fire it up.
irritable.
It's okay.
Oh,
What was that, Leanne?
They're a little bit irritable. Some of them are overly tired, and they've been for several reasons.
Okay. People were irritable. They were tired. What else? What else did you notice?
Fear.
They were scared, maybe. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Were many of them wearing the same clothes they would have been wearing if they hadn't had the storm?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one thing about it is that when you think about this, how many of them were living in places that they hadn't lived in before the storm?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And maybe there was issues of food insecurity.
Yeah.
Mom and dad were worried about their jobs. They might have had to pick up
Yeah.
and move because of their jobs or what have you. All right. Well, the thing is, let me ask you a question. Did anybody think about how many incidents of behavior you saw when everybody finally got back to school after Hurricane Florence? How many behavior incidents were there in comparison to what you would have seen beforehand?
It probably increased because they won't on a constant schedule no more, and what they're going through at home are affecting how they behave in class now.
All right, Paquita, you're right. There were a lot of things that happened during that stretch of time for these kids, and you think about it. There were kids that I will bet you there were kids in the schools you all were in who normally would have never gotten in trouble, who had all kinds of difficulty focusing and dealing with what had happened to them. And and of course the resources all over the area were stretched thin. They might have had to have donated clothes because their homes were flooded. They might have been sleeping in a shelter. They might have been sleeping in motel rooms, campers, you name it, or living with relatives or whatever it might be. And
I can tell you firsthand, it happened to me, and I was displaced for 3 months, and we stayed in our house, and my boys ended up being traumatized by it, and their behavior it's getting better, but it was real bad when it was going on.
Okay. And you think about it, as an adult, it was stressful enough for adults. Think about a kid who doesn't have any of those.
Yeah, they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't have any of those coping skills at that age.
Yeah.
Or they don't have them developed as much. Okay. So naturally, where's it going to show out? At school.
At school.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about during the course of this classes, we're going to talk about how things affect children, because it's real easy to put in a discipline plan. One of the things that drives me crazy about every high school I go into in this part of the state is everybody, remember the zero tolerance? Everybody, zero tolerance, no cell phones, zero tolerance. We're not going to put up with this. We're not going to put up with that. We're going to kick you out of school. You miss 8 days of school in the semester, you're going to fail for the semester. Zero tolerance, zero tolerance. Well, one of the things that happens is this. One size doesn't fit every child.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about. There are going to be times when your patience is going to be tested to the point where it's, you've got the last nerve, and that child in that classroom is jumping up and down on it, and it's 1:30 on a Friday afternoon, and you're praying you make it to 3 o'clock before you kill it. Okay? And, and we've all been there. And one of the things we got to look at is we got to look at the why part. And that's one of the things we're going to spend a whole lot of time with as we talk. And I'm going to tell you, tonight I'm talking a lot, but I'm not going to be talking like this every week. So, like I said, save it up all week and turn it loose on Thursday night. It's fine with me. But as far as things are concerned, we're going to talk about a number of things because we think because things we think are very important. I loved reading y'all's first forums because I really, one of the things about it is when I got in there and started reading some of them, I was really excited. You all were talking about consistency. You were talking about relationships, and you were talking about the things that, that really mean things. Let me ask y'all this real quick before we go any further. I want you to think back to your favorite teacher growing up. Your very favorite teacher. The one that when you're old, you're still going to be thinking about your favorite teacher when someone asks you about a teacher. What was the difference with that teacher and any other teacher you had in class? And I'm serious, y'all share. What was the difference between that teacher?
She was kind. That's what I would say mostly.
Okay. Teacher had a kind
Mine,
demeanor.
she
Okay.
acted.
What was
Mine
that?
acted like she cared.
Yeah.
My favorite
that's
teacher,
what
she
I'm
just
about.
she acted like she cared. She treated me like I mattered.
Yeah.
Even when I was sick
Yeah.
in the hospital
Yep, same here.
as a child, she
Yeah.
came to the hospital to see me, and
Yeah.
it made
Okay.
me feel like $1 million.
Well, and when you think about that, that's a big deal for a child.
Yeah.
What else? What else about these people? What do you remember about them that made them your absolute favorite teacher? And you knew you might have clowned around in somebody else's class, but you darn sure weren't in that class.
They take time out to listen to you.
All right, they listened. That's a good point, Paquita, that they listened. They were willing to sit there and listen to you. And sometimes some of it might have been so ridiculous as far as you were concerned, but you had to tell somebody, and they were willing to listen. Okay. What else do you remember about that person?
She read aloud
took
to
up
us.
time to.
I'm sorry.
What was that?
She actually took up time to make sure you understood the material,
Okay.
regardless of how many times she had to go over it.
All right, Tracy, we're getting your audio, but we're not getting any visuals. I'm assuming you're somewhere where you can't get onto the recording. But
Yeah.
anyway, but that's right. She took the time. That teacher would take the time. They'd go that extra mile. I think about when I was in school, particularly when I was in high school. And see, I went to high school in a weird situation. I went to high school in a school where my father was my high school principal, and my mother taught for my dad, and I couldn't get away with much. And most of the time, the teachers I had were trying to catch the principal's kid doing something, so they had a reason to go down there and, well, guess what your son did? Well, but I had one particular teacher that I really, really, really liked, and oddly enough, he was the band director. And one of the things I always think about was the fact that if you just needed someplace to go, like it was lunchtime, and then we had an hour-long lunch. That was back in the old days before block scheduling, when you'd actually have a 50-minute lunch period. You'd eat lunch, and you really didn't want to go hang out with anybody or anything. He'd let you come down to the band room. He'd talk to you about what was going on. He'd talk to you about things you could work on or whatever. Really nice. And I think about that even now. that was one of those things that I'll remember because every teacher in the school building wasn't necessarily doing it. Let me ask you all something real quick. I want y'all to look up something on YouTube when you get off here. It's funny. How many of you have ever seen the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High? Anybody ever seen that movie?
No, I've never seen it.
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, what I want you to do is I want you to go on YouTube either tonight or this weekend, and I want you to look up. And I'm going to send this when I write the follow up, because after we do every class, or after we do every Zoom session, I'll write a follow up and I'll send it to you. This is what we covered. There's a little clip in that movie called Jeff Spicoli Meets Mr. Hand. And of course, Jeff is the classic slacker. And Mr. Hand is the classic authoritarian who wants control in his classroom. And the reason why I want you to watch this is I want you to watch what was perceived to be effective at the time that movie came out. And then I want you to think about what now you consider effective, okay? Because it's kind of interesting. The movie came out in 1981, okay? Or 1982, excuse me. Came out in 1982, and it was a whole different ball game at that time. But that being said, I'm gonna put it in the email. But I want you to think about this now. When we're talking about classroom management, do you realize, and you'll see some of this when you do your reading this week, 58% of instructional time is lost every day because of student behavior. Over half of the school day is lost because of student behavior. Now, when you think about that, how different do the kids act really than they acted 10 years ago or 15 years ago? They act different. They might have more toys. They might have more video stuff to play with, tablets and whatnot, cell phones and what have you. But if they were placed in the same place with those kids, are they going to act any different?
Mm.
They probably aren't acting much different. They just have access to more toys. That's what I refer to everything. They have, now you have to worry about when you're doing something on a tablet, whether they're actually doing the assignment or whether they're actually, doing something else. They've accessed another website and they're doing all kinds of stuff. If we think about it, think about the key components of a good behavior situation. Expectations that are very clear. Great teachers make sure those expectations are clear on day one, and they continue to do them over and over again. Mutual respect. You like that kid. I'm not talking about you love that kid. I love it when you hear teachers go, "Oh, I love children," and they're down there yelling down the hallway at them, screaming at them. And it's like, and I always think about this. There's an old classic movie. I'm a classic movie guy, and I'll talk a lot about movies because I think movies are the common language that all Americans have because we like the movies. There's an old classic movie that Jimmy Stewart was in that was filmed in the early 60s called Shenandoah. And there's a part in there where this guy comes to ask him if he can marry his daughter. And he says to the guy, he says, "Do you like her?" And he says, "I love her. I love her." He said, "No, I didn't ask you if you loved her. I said, do you like her?" And he said, "I don't understand what you're saying." He said, "Well, when I met her mother, I really liked her. I grew to love her, but I really liked her." Okay. And the point he was trying to get across is this somebody that you absolutely want to be around? Okay. And I think that's what kids deal with a lot of times. Do they know we like them? We can talk about loving them. Every teacher in this business loves the kids. But do they like them enough to figure out a way to help them? Sometimes I tell my little girl, and my little girl can step on the last nerve easy sometimes. She's a redhead. What do you expect with a redhead, man? It's like it's on all the time. But one of the things I talk about all the time is like if I get on her, I say, "I love you, but I don't like what you just did." Okay. And that's one of the things we got to think about with these kids. I mean, do we like them enough to do the day-to-day stuff? That mutual respect thing. Do we like them so that they know that they can trust us. Do we build that relationship? That's the third piece. We're going to talk a lot about relationship building in this, because you can get anybody to do anything you want them to do if they think that you have their best interest at heart, and if they know that you're not going to put them in a situation that either A, gets them hurt, or B, gets them in trouble. And if they know the routines are there. You know, one of the things I asked my wife about when we came back from Christmas break, my wife teaches English at Croatan High School down in Carter County. And I asked her, I said, you know, what were the kids like? And the first thing she said was, she said, there were some kids who were so happy to be back at school because that was the most continuity they had in 2 weeks, was coming back that first day. You know, why do you think this? And I'm going to ask this question. Why do you think it is that the kids fight at school? Why do you think the kids fight at school?
Maybe for attention.
Well, they do fight for attention. Sometimes they fight for attention. Why do you think they fight at school?
Reputation.
Maybe they're trying to protect their reputation.
Well, they're around.
Or maybe they're.
But that's a social setting.
Yeah, it's a social setting.
They might not be around them.
Okay, they might not be around them. Paquita, what do you think? You had your hand up.
And I think some of them, like, not getting the love that other kids get at home, and they see it. It could, you know, they might be jealous of that, you know, that child.
Okay, maybe
some might get more attention.
Maybe they're jealous,
you know, than the other.
That's a good possibility. Why do you think kids fight at school?
It's a cry for help a lot of times.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about the reason why?
Yeah, breath is better than no breath at all.
Maybe, have you ever thought about why the kids sometimes fight at school? Might be because of the fact that we're the only continuity they have, and that they know we'll intervene so they don't hurt themselves. You think about it. You get a fight.
True.
Yeah, you get in a fight in the street.
First thing we do is try to stop it.
You get in a fight in the street somewhere.
Nobody's going to stop it. All they're going to do is video it.
Yeah, that's right.
But what's the first thing that happens when something happens if you're in a middle school or high school, something happens in the cafeteria or happens in the hallway when they're changing classes? What's the first thing that happens?
Somebody's gonna break it up.
Somebody's gonna break it up.
All the teachers come running.
Everybody comes running, and they get between everybody, spread them out, and
to sort it out.
Get the traffic moving, and you know, and the reason, you know, I think one of the reasons why kids do that is that they know we're not going to let it go, but so far.
Right.
It's almost a comfort.
Yeah, it is.
A comfort zone.
Even that kid who may hate the idea of coming to school, may hate the idea of having to do work, may tell you they hate you. Even that kid comes to that school because he knows, number one, I'm going to get fed breakfast, I'm going to get fed lunch. They know someone's going to take care of me, they're going to look after me. If I'm coming in there dirty, someone's going to hand me a toothpaste, toothbrush, something so I can go clean myself up in the bathroom. Heck, they might even hand me some clean clothes and throw my clothes in the washing machine.
That's true.
You know, and not that, and I know the first thing people will say sometimes is that's not the school's job. But let me just say this. If a kid is willing to come because they know you're going to make sure that their creature comforts are taken care of, then they're going to eventually put out some effort for you.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's one of the things.
They will go above and beyond.
Can I say something to that?
Sure.
And share an experience really quickly that I had.
Sure.
I proctored at my son's middle school last year on the makeup days for the EOGs, which were the 2 and 3 days after school ended. And on those makeup days, the school offered the students who had to make up their test, they got breakfast and lunch that day. In the hallway, as I was getting my class assignment from the principal had to stop talking to me to go attend to a teacher with a student. The buses went around and picked up students who had to make up tests. This student did not have to make up an EOG test. He got up and got dressed that morning and got on that bus and came to that school the first day of summer break.
You want something to eat.
To eat. Not because his parents aren't providing for him. His parents both work around the clock, and it takes everything they have, you know, to pay bills and everything. And they go a long time on a little bit of food. And this just happened to fall in one of those times where they just didn't have anything. And they were both working, and he got up and went to school in middle school. And you know what that's like. You know how kids are in middle school. They ridicule everything. He got up out of desperation school because he knew he was going to eat.
That's
And
amazing.
I stood there in that hallway
Mm-hmm.
trying not to listen to that conversation between the teacher. But it got to me so bad because I was, oh my, bless his heart, you know, bless all of them, their whole family. I mean, they're struggling. They're doing the best they can. And here he is here looking for help. And they had no breakfast left. And they went on, the other teachers that were working the teacher work days, they went ahead and put money together, and one teacher went out and bought like Chef Boyardee cans and, you know, little Vienna sausages and things like that, and sent him home with one of the like chew bags because chew bags were over. It was done. School was done. So they, you know, they made that bag up for him and his family for the rest of the week, you know, until they got paid. And it just, whew, that's something to see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about with this whole idea of classroom management is that we went from the concept of discipline. We're going to keep discipline, keep control, to the fact that we realize that children have creature needs that are not being met sometimes. You know, for example, you know, we'll talk a lot about Maslow in this class, okay? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People need to know that they can be fed, they can be kept safe, and they can be kept in a situation where they feel secure, and then they will perform. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as we go through this. But in 2000, the U.S. Department of Education, this is kind of interesting, said that 4 out of 5 disruptive student behaviors could be traced to how the students, schools, and classrooms and staff were trained in how those things operated. And you think about how we are now versus how we were prior to, say, Hurricane Florence coming to town. You know, when we think about this 2 years later, we're still not even close to where we need to be because there were issues before the hurricane. But when we think about that, a lot of those things have a lot of impact on what we do. And that's one of the things that I really think is really important. You know, inspect what you expect. They'll live up or live down to your expectations, whatever they are. Now, I will tell you, we're going to talk about some other things through this course. We're going to talk about concepts of economics. We're going to talk about social and ethnicity roles and how things are connected. We're going to talk about, you know, state initiatives, federal initiatives that are going on. And I want you to remember when you're this first week, I'm not giving you a major assignment because I want you to read. And I'll tell you at the very beginning, we'll read more than we're going to read as we go through. And for week number 1, in your textbook that you're going to have, because we're going to run out of time here in about 3 minutes, so I'm not going to keep you tied up. In week number 1 in your textbook, chapter 1 and 2, pages 1 through 46 are going to be real important for setting the stage for what we do, okay? And I will tell you, you will not have a writing assignment due for me until the 26th of January, okay? And the reason why is I want you to get a good foundation so you're ready next Thursday night to discuss things. Now, those of you, is there anybody who's doing the PPAT this semester?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and share something with you all on Saturday the 25th in the Henderson building from 9 to 1. I'm going to be running a PPAT workshop to start setting up task number 1. So if you are working on the PPAT this semester and you want to come, you are more than welcome to be there. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and do this and kind of work our way through that. But one of the things I want you to start thinking about is I want you to start thinking about when you do these assignments, start thinking about the makeup of your classes. Start thinking about your students. Start thinking about trends you see among them and things. Those are the ways that we are able to more effectively teach. Now, if we get dumped off real quick, don't worry. Just jump back on. You can click and come back up. If we get dumped off, I'm hoping we won't. But one of the
I
things I
have a
really want.
question about the PPAT
Yes, ma'am.
workshop.
Yes.
Question I have, I live over 2 hours away from the campus, so will there be anything recorded that I can look at in order to do this
Okay.
past one?
Tanya, Tanya, are you a residency student or a lateral entry student?
Yes, I just my plan of study just got changed today
Okay.
to
So I tell you what, I will send you the stuff I sent out last night after we did the Zoom for the PPAT prep stuff. I'll send it out to you and kind of we'll figure out a way to work with you. Okay. We'll figure
Okay.